Hey guys, tonight we set out on a dreamy walk into history, slow, quiet, and a touch peculiar, like wandering into a museum where the exhibits keep politely winking at you. You'll be stepping into the role of our time-traveling night stroller, shoes comfortably tied, eyes already feeling heavy as oil lamps flicker in the distance. Just so you know, if you were actually dropped into ancient Mesopotamia, you would probably not survive more than a day between the sudden floods, the suspiciously spiky sandals, and the casual habit of writing laws about everything from barley prices to the right way to water your donkey. Life was, let's say, less sleep-friendly than what we're attempting tonight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments where you are tuning in from, and what time it is right now as you're settling down. Now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step softly onto sun-baked clay, and the air smells faintly of reeds, dust, and bread fresh from ovens hidden in alleyways. This is not a place of silenced donkeys bray. Children chase each other, and every third person is loudly discussing barley with the seriousness of accountants discussing gold. You trail along, your sandals crunching lightly, and a vendor waves a flat cake of bread that looks suspiciously like an early prototype of pizza, but without the cheese or the tomato, meaning of course, it's just bread. Still, the warmth and aroma make your stomach rumble. This is a city with streets both muddy and magnificent, where homes lean together in narrow alleys, and where ziggurats rise like staircases for very ambitious giants. You walk past scribes hunched over clay tablets, each smacking their stylus into mud with the patience of someone who doesn't yet know about pens. To be fair, these tablets will outlast every paper notebook you've ever owned. So who's laughing now? The truth is, Mesopotamian towns were buzzing centers of trade, politics, and gossip. Farmers dragged baskets of onions and unexpectedly spicy currency of the time, while priests counted offerings with the seriousness of accountants preparing for tax season. Historians tell us writing was invented here, mostly for bookkeeping. Not love poems, not heroic adventures, just endless lists. Pot, goat, one more goat, definitely another pot. Imagine explaining to a scribe, "What I want is a really moving short story about insomnia," and watching him carve back, "We don't do that here. Take another goat." You pause near a courtyard where music drifts on the warm air harps and flutes in gentle rhythm. Maybe a lullaby drifting across centuries. Someone beats a tiny drum, steady as a heartbeat, and you feel drowsiness curl around the sound. The crowd sways lightly, the stars shimmer above, and you're lulled into comfort by the absurdity that the world's oldest known lullabies are carved into clay. Yes, archaeology reveals fragments of music that mothers once hummed here, around 2000 BCE, almost here. One now, soft, steady, repetitive, maybe a little nagging, like all songs meant for babies and restless sleepers alike. Pressing on, you notice the ziggurat, rising terraced and broad, each level a stage for rituals. The air glimmers with torchlight, and you sense how imposing this pyramid must have been for people who thought gods climbed stairs at nightfall. But priests, drifting upward, don't reveal their secrets. Historians still wonder if each layer carried more than ceremony, maybe a form of astronomical chart, or layers of symbolic meaning stacked like cosmic Lego. And while scholars whisper theories, you lean against a brick, warmed by the day's sun, pretending you belong here among stargazers. The sun sets, painting the Tigris horizon pink, and suddenly the streets smell of roasted dates. Someone hands you a cup of beer, frothy, sour, a little strange. Mesopotamian beer was thick, almost chewy, and sipped with straws to bypass floating grain bits. You raise it gingerly, and, surprisingly, The taste is comforting, earthy, yeasty, like a sleepy embrace from bread dough itself. The locals, by the way, drank it constantly. It was safer than water, and who doesn't want to live in a society where even breakfast involves a pint? Asterisk, you wander toward the sound of drums fading into the hum of night. Clay walls echo with laughter and fragments of chatter. Someone scolds a goat nibbling at laundry. Someone else boasts that their house brick is stronger because it was dried in the better kill. Maybe the world's first home improvement argument. You let it all wash over you. Chatter you don't understand. But somehow, you feel the cozy ordinariness of it all. Like peeking into another timeline's neighborhood. Asterisk, as the stars come sharper overhead. You think about cuneiform tablets lying quietly on shelves today, tucked in museums, many still unread. Whole lives whisper in signs, pressed by steady hands, nearly 5,000 years ago. Seats, prayers, dreams, reminders not to forget the onions. The fact that so many remain untranslated is a strange lull itself. An archive of voices hushed but not gone. An eternal bedtime story waiting for its reader. Asterisk, the night deepens. Warm air shifts softer. Sand tunes down its heat, and lamps throw friendly amber puddles on the ground. For a moment, you forget that you're a visitor, forgetting your modern bed and digital clock back home. You only feel wind brushing your hair, shadows flickering with life, and the gentle weight of time reminding you, you're safe here. Strolling slowly in the ancient cradle of history itself. You drift onward, half aware of the dark archways closing behind you as the glow of oil lamps fades into distance. The night carries you gently forward, smoothing out the rough edges of clay underfoot, until the sound of water begins to hush in your ears. It's a low, eternal kind of sound, steady and wide, the Nile at night, gliding like a ribbon loosened from the earth itself. Asterisk, the air is cooler here, carrying a sweetness that might be from papyrus reeds, swaying lazily, or maybe from the faint perfume of lotus blossoms. Still awake at the water's edge, you are ushered onto a reed boat bound tightly with clever knots. The texture a bit scratchy under your palms, smelling like straw after rain. A boatman dips his oar silently, the rippling water lapping in rhythm like a heartbeat. And soon you're floating into a slow dream down the river. Asterisk, crocodiles. Yes, they're out there, officially invited by nature's guest list. But don't worry, they don't seem interested tonight. Then again, real Egyptians approached crocodiles with a mixture of fear and reverence. They even had a crocodile god, Sobek, who wasn't exactly the snuggliest of deities, but he was powerful enough that you'd think twice before rolling your eyes at him. You, however, are safe, tucked in this boat under the canopy of stars. Trailing downstream as whispers of the day sink into silence. Asterisk. The banks glow faintly with torchlight from temples, standing like giants with carved faces. Pillars tower overhead, etched with stories you don't need to read, to feel their shapes reaching into eternity. Their hieroglyphs crowded with owls, suns, and serpents maneuvering in neat rows. It's impressive, if not slightly dizzying, as though you stumbled into the world's longest comic strip carved in stone. Asterisk, a gentle breeze brushes across your face, carrying the smell of bread, again different bread this time, flat and round, baked in a clay oven. Women's laughter drifts from the banks where they gather, washing clothes in the water, their songs blending with the river's murmur. There's no rush here. Everything feels steady, cyclical, eternal. The Nile was the clock of Egypt. Every year, it rose and spilled, leaving rich black silt that farmers greeted like an old friend. Imagine if your calendar relied on whether your front yard filled with mud. It seems inconvenient until you realize it worked with perfect regularity. Asterisk, your boat glides near one of the temples, and you notice sleeping pilgrims under the stars, wrapped in linen, believing they'll receive dreams sent by the gods as cures. This practice called incubation was part medicine, part divine therapy, and entirely bedtime themed. It's hard not to smile, even 4,000 years ago. People hoped their sleep would bring answers, which makes you feel slightly better about your habit of Googling your strange dreams. Asterisk, a priest passes by, balancing a sistrum, an instrument that jingles softly, sounding a little like a metal rattle. He shakes it gently, a calm shimmer filling the air, supposedly pleasing to Hathor, goddess of joy and motherhood. The sound is hypnotic, drawing your eyelids into slow blinks, almost tricking your body into sleep as you keep drifting downstream. Asterisk. There's a curious fact nudging at you as you settle in here. Egyptian pillows were not fluffy. They were curved stone or wood supports headdressed, really, like elegant doorstops for your neck. Supposedly, this kept you cool, and bugs from crawling into your ears at night. Which makes sense. Though anyone who's pressed their cheek against stone at bedtime might wonder if comfort was occasionally sacrificed for practicality. Maybe that's why dreams were so important. Your body couldn't relax, so your mind was assigned extra duties. Asterisk, moonlight stretches across the water like an endless silver scroll, unrolling as far as you can see. The boatman hums low, tuneless but steady, his voice resting in the hollow of his throat. Around you, the reeds crackle softly from night birds. It feels unhurried, as though the universe wants to rock you steadily in its cradle. Asterisk, somewhere in the distance, temples rise larger than mountains, gateways topped with enormous pylons. The stars themselves seem mirrored in the painted ceilings of sacred halls. Historians still wonder how exactly the Egyptians aligned their monuments so precisely with the heavens. Was it astronomy? Was it patient observation? Or was it simply the stubbornness of countless surveyors hauling measuring ropes through the desert, muttering, "It's still off by 2 cubits, Khepri." Whatever the case, you sit here benefiting from their obsession, bathed in geometry and harmony, lulled by structures that never intended to be cozy but somehow are. Asterisk. The boat brushes the water's edge as you pause near gardens. Neat rows of onions and leeks, glowing ghostly pale. These humble vegetables were staples of Egyptian life. Workers on the pyramids were paid partly in rations of beer, bread, and onions. That means, technically, one of history's greatest wonders was fueled primarily by a menu of carbs and root vegetables. You smile at the thought centuries from now. Human monuments might be remembered as powered by coffee and donuts. Asterisk. A cat stretches near the riverbank, eyes flashing gold in the lamplight. Cats are everywhere here. They are sacred, treasured, sometimes even mummified, but mostly, they're just behaving exactly as cats always do, ignoring your admiration, focusing deeply on something invisible, then falling asleep in self-declared royalty. The cat yawns widely, and you feel that contagious pull, the reminder that nothing commands rest quite like watching an unbothered feline curl into the dust. Asterisk. The sound of the Nile doesn't fade as you lean back against the reed boat. The oar slides through the water with a rhythm smoother than any lullaby, and the air stays heavy with river scent, flower scent, warm and cool, all mingled. You feel time here differently, like the river itself, both immediate and eternal. For now, you are simply drifting, surrounded by lotus, lulled by stone gods, embraced by water sliding endlessly into tomorrow. You feel the boat finally brush shore, and just as softly as it began, the Egyptian night folds behind you. The air shivers, warm yet brisk, and when your feet touch ground again, you're standing somewhere much brighter, somewhere busy. A city spread with white stone and olive trees, ringing with voices that never seem to tire of themselves. The marble under your sandals glows as if it were polished daily by argument alone. You've arrived in the city of Athens. Asterisk. Immediately, the noise is different. It is not the murmured chant of priests or the hush of hieroglyphs carved into temple walls. No, this sound is sharp, conversational, airy, like the city itself hums with debate. A crowd swells around you, citizens draped in togas or, really, chitons gesturing broadly, as though pointing is just another form of punctuation. Somewhere nearby, An earnest young man lectures loudly about virtue or philosophy, or why olives are the truest expression of happiness. He hasn't eaten in 3 hours, and he believes you should care. Asterisk, the streets here are sunlit, even at twilight, dust glowing gold as it shifts under your feet. You brush against market stalls where figs are stacked in pyramids, honey glazes drip thick as syrup, and jars of oil gleam amber in the light. Everyone seems proud of their olives. Olives here aren't just food, they're medicine, fuel for lamps, offerings for gods. People rub them into their skin for shine. And yes, in their stubborn optimism, they even suggest olives can cure a hangover. You make a mental note that this claim has never been widely confirmed, though it doesn't stop locals from nodding with authority. Asterisk, the air smells faintly of roasted lamb. Smoke curls from clay ovens. A baker swats dust off his apron, then tosses you a loaf of dense bread with a grin. You wonder how many quiet historians have sighed wistfully at the thought that, while philosophies may endure, the best smells of history are lost. Saffron on a breeze, mint in a mortar, garlic cracked under stone. Tonight, though, you catch it all, filtering into your chest like a herbal lullaby. Asterisk, you stroll further into the agora, the central marketplace, which is much less like a shopping mall, and much more like an open-air stage for endless chatter. Some discuss the latest play, quoting lines while stamping feet in exaggerated tragedy. Others negotiate trade while sheep bleat, unimpressed by socioeconomic theory. And there, beneath an olive tree, a man gestures with a stick and asks, "What is justice?" loudly enough for several pigeons to look offended. Asterisk, yes, this is philosophy, not as quiet thought, but as public sport. Socrates himself once circled these streets, tugging at the hems of strangers for conversation, chasing truth while everyone else tried to buy onions in peace. The fact is, much of Greek philosophy thrived not in lecture halls, but in markets, workshops, outdoor corners, where ordinary people were unsuspecting participants in the world's longest IQ test. Imagine being ambushed while shopping for herbs. Tell me, my friend, what is courage? And realizing all you wanted was time and maybe garlic. Asterisk, of course, not every distraction is mental. You hear the clinking of sandals' woven leather straps tapping against marble, their wearers proud of the squeak echoing through polished stone. Greek sandals were practical, but their rhythmic squeaks must have driven at least one citizen mildly insane. Parents muttered, philosophers ignored, dogs chased after those squeaks with endless delight. Asterisk, the sun lowers, but the sky lingers soft, as if it isn't in a hurry. A theater nearby hums with preparation, actors smoothing their masks, chords being adjusted, audiences rustling into place. The chorus hums in deep practice, voices vibrating so low you feel it in your bones. Greeks, after all, invented drama, comedy, tragedy, satire. Laughter and mourning were both staged here, side by side. You wonder which role you'd stumble into, and then wisely decide sleeping audience member would suit you best. Asterisk, closer now. The streets open to a courtyard where musicians strum the lyre. A young boy taps a tambourine with nervous rhythm. Older men clap along, missing the beat but earnestly invested. Wine flows freely, though mixed with water. Greeks were horrified at the barbaric habit of drinking pure wine unmixed, which they considered unsophisticated. You reflect that nothing makes someone sleepier than watered-down wine under the drum of evening voices. Asterisk, a little-known detail catches you by surprise. Beyond all this lively noise, quiet gymnasiums line the city. And no, they weren't just for exercise. These were places of learning, literally naked schools where men debated ideas, quite literally in the nude. That casual detail might explain why Plato always insisted on dialogue once you've had to defend logic while unclothed. Your arguments tend to sharpen. You chuckle, then glance discreetly around thankfully. Everyone here in your vision seems well draped tonight. Asterisk, as twilight deepens, Lamps spark in windows. You pass narrow alleyways where bread bakes steadily, the crusts cracking loudly in ovens shaped like domes or beehives. Cats again, shadows tail flicking, weaving between baskets of olives. The smell of roasted chickpeas teases beside them, as if inviting you to linger forever in this timeless kitchen of ideas. Asterisk, yet questions rise, quiet under the noise. How much of what we imagine of Athens is truth, and how much is performance polished by centuries of admiration? Did Socrates ever grow tired of his own voice? Did children rolling clay balls in the streets care for the Parthenon rising above them? Or did they just see it as another structure crowding out the sky? Historians debate, was Athens sincerely democratic, or mainly democratic if you were male, free, and conveniently wealthy? The arguments hum louder than the market, but tonight you don't chase answers. You let them hover like moths circling torch flames. Asterisk, the marble underfoot cools now, radiating the warmth of the day back to the evening. Dogs bark, sellers pack up their stalls, wine jugs clink as they're stacked in corners. Slowly, all the chatter folds into a gentle hush, and you slip away through olive groves on the edge of the city, their leaves whispering silver in the moonlight. A softer philosophy altogether, not the words of men, but the quiet exhale of trees. You stroll away from the olive groves, leaving Athens fading behind you like a candle flickering into the dark, and you find yourself stepping into air heavy with warm steam, perfumed with herbs and the faint mineral temps of water. The sound is unmistakable, distant splashes, voices echoing lightly off stone. Rome greets you not with a public oration or a battlefield trumpet, but with the cozy murmur of its favorite pastime, the bathhouse. Asterisk, the pavement under your feet vibrates faintly as water rushes beneath it, carried by the marvel of aqueducts stretching like frozen arcs of sky across the land. The Romans didn't just bring water into their cities, they made water the city's heartbeat. And here, late in the day, men and women alike drift toward the thermae, public baths that were less about bathing and more about social life. Imagine it, a combination of spa, coffeehouse, gym, and mall food court, with everyone half naked and chatting about politics. You're about to walk in, and yes, your modesty may need a stern pep talk. Asterisk, upon entering, warm air kisses your cheeks, thick and wet like the inside of a teak. The walls gleam with marble veined in green and red, floors patterned in tiny mosaics, each tessera glinting like a trapped gem. Pools shimmer ahead, some steaming like cauldrons, others cool in starlit blue. A cohort of Romans recline on benches, bodies slick with oil, attendants scraping their skin with curved metal strigils that look suspiciously like shoehorns repurposed for hygiene. You back up slightly, unsure whether this ritual is exfoliation or medieval torture, but the men sigh happily, the scraping echoing like the scratch of quills on parchment, and you realize this is relaxation Roman style. Asterisk, you slip into the warm tepid, the middle pool, neither too hot nor too cool. The water slides against your skin, and suddenly it's the most sensible thing you've ever felt. The echo of laughter bounces overhead, punctuated sometimes by the sharp sound of a thrown splash, followed by mock outrage, and then more laughter. You recline against the edge, the stone smooth as if polished by centuries of resting elbows, and you feel the weight of time tumble into warmth. Asterisk, next to you, two men whisper about gladiators in the Colosseum. Did you see the Thracian yesterday? Their voices tinged with the same giddiness modern sports fans have before arguing over penalty calls. Somewhere further down, another group muses about business deals, politics, gossip, complaints about the best olive oil. It all floats across the bathhouse like steam. You smile. So much of history changes, but people will forever chatter in saunas about other people. Asterisk, a vendor wanders by and offers you You politely decline, because garum is fermented fish sauce, and you're still recovering from the barley beer of Mesopotamia. But here lies a curious fact. Romans adored garum so much, It was sprinkled on practically everything: bread, beans, meat, even fruit. Imagine ketchup mixed with soy sauce, aged for weeks, and then served with the enthusiasm of modern hot sauce. You might admire their culinary persistence, but not necessarily at bedtime. And Vena. Yes, the delicate topic of Roman toilet habits drifts into your mind, because the bathhouses and latrines often went side by side. Romans famously used communal sponges on sticks called tersoria, rinsed in running water. The unsanitary comedy aside, it was ingenious for mass use. You tilt your head at the absurdity of it. Romans, masters of aqueducts and amphitheaters, somehow also perfected the art of the shared sponge. It's the sort of contradiction history thrives on. Innovations carrying a touch of comedy. The heat intensifies as you wander toward the caldarium, the hottest pool, where marble statues stand misted in steam. Oil lamps flicker against vaulted ceilings, shadows elongating until they look like giants bending to whisper across the room. Your body slows with the weight of warmth pressing against your skin. Romans consider the bathhouse a gift to the people, entree for rich and poor alike, though the experience must have been a little less restful when overstuffed with chatter and clanging buckets. Tonight, however, the baths are yours, serene, dreamlike, steam blending with moonlight as if time itself melted. One man nearby leans in, telling a story of pipes running under the floors, hypocaust heating, a Roman invention that routed warm air to heat entire rooms. The floor beneath you tingles faintly warm, and you marvel. Long before radiators or electric blankets, Romans had entire heated bath. Engineers at heart, they prioritized comfort when possible. Historians still debate, though. How effective was this heating for regular households? Was it widely available, or mainly a feature of elite luxury? The debate lingers in books. But tonight, you don't answer. You simply breathe in steam and let imagination resolve what fact cannot. Then, with a sudden cool rush, you slip into the frigidarium, the cold bath. Water closes around you like a glassy suit of armor, shocking every nerve awake. Romans believed this contrast hot, then cold invigorated both body and mind. You surface with a gasp that turns quickly into laughter, droplets cascading down your shoulders. It feels like the perfect balance, a cycle of heat and cold that somehow makes the entire ritual not indulgence, but something approaching necessity. As you leave the pools, the night air greets you anew. Outside, the streets hum gently with late traffic, cartwheels clattering, sandals clopping, dogs barking lazily. The steam slipping off your clothes mingles with scents of bread and roasted chestnuts drifting from alley ovens. A hush seems to settle now, the city exhaling after its day of spectacle. You hear, faintly, the shuffle of dice in taverns, the light trill of a flute drifting over rooftops. You pause to look back. Behind you, the bathhouse glows like a lantern, marble columns lit by fire pots that flicker steady as constellations. The laughter, the splashes, the whispers, they all blend into a steady murmur of human warmth. You've bathed not only in water, but in a city's soul, where even relaxation was engineered to monumental scale. And so, as the breeze cools your skin, you take a slow step forward, leaving Rome wrapped in steam, your body lighter, your eyes heavier, as if the past itself is tucking you in. You step out of Rome, your body still warm from the last wisps of steam, and the air around you shifts into something drier, more fragrant, and streaked with dust. The light changes, too. It grows golden pink, as though you've walked straight into a painting made entirely of sunsets. And in the hush of this moment, you notice the jingle of bells, the steady swish of camel tails, and the weight of silence carried by desert sands. You are on the Silk Road, stepping into a world strung together not by walls or armies, but by footsteps, hooves, and trade. Asterisk the ground beneath you is a patchwork of packed earth and scattered stones. The stars are beginning their slow sprawl across the sky, unfurling like distant silk themselves. A caravan stretches in the distance, long lines of camels, silhouettes bobbing steadily, each decorated with bells that twinkle with movement. The bells aren't loud, just a faint metallic shimmer, like sleepy wind chimes gently following along. You fall into their pace, slow, deliberate. No point hurrying when the journey itself is life. Asterisk, your senses are filled with curious blends. The dry spice of wind stinging your nose one moment, then, from a merchant's bag, a sudden burst of cinnamon, dried apricots, and leather. A rider passes with cloth rolled carefully turquoised blue silk, luminous even under starlight, flowing like water trapped in fabric. You reach out, feeling a drop of history between your fingers, soft and impossibly smooth. Silk was no ordinary material. To the Romans and beyond, it was a near mystical treasure, carried thousands of miles just to shimmer on someone's shoulder. And here it is, rumpled in a saddlebag, waiting to be admired by sleepy travelers. Asterisk, as you pause beneath the shadow of a massive dune, a caravan master offers you tea. It is in your modern mug. It comes in a small clay cup, astringent, spiced faintly, hot enough to surprise your tongue into obedience. They believe it sharpens the mind, which makes sense, because walking through deserts with camels sounds like an activity requiring patience and wide-awake alertness. Luckily, tonight, the tea only makes you drowsy in a particularly soothing way, a comfort carried over centuries. Asterisk, in the flicker of campfires ahead, you spot more evidence of the Silk Road's true magic. There's no single voice here. 10 languages ring out at once. Traders from Persia balancing ledgers, beside merchants from India discussing peppercorns. Nomads singing lullabies in Turkic verses that twine seamlessly into Arabic prayers. Greek words slipped casually into sentences while Chinese dialects hum alongside. This isn't chaos, it's harmony, like an orchestra tuning itself at dusk, and you sit right in the middle. A quiet listener to humanity's great multilingual bedtime story. Asterisk, you chew on dried fruit, handed to you by someone remarkably generous with their apricots, and watch shadows stretch long across the sand. In the distance, a musician plucks a lute, its notes fragile, wavering against the desert's vast silence. It's slow, repetitive, perfect music for rocking your thoughts toward slumber. Faces glow by copper firelight, eyes soften with travel's fatigue, and suddenly this feels less like history and more like the universal human need. A night together, fire beside us, safe enough to rest. Asterisk, there's a quirky truth here, worth a smile. Alongside silk and spices, the Silk Road carried glass mirrors. Imagine being in the middle of the desert, trading for apricots or frankincense, only to walk away with the first shiny reflective surface you've ever owned. Records hint that mirrors were once astonishing luxuries, a way to finally discover whether your face actually matched the stories your mother told you. You laugh quietly, because every one of us has taken a very long journey for something shiny at least once in life. Asterisk, the desert winds pick up, brushing your cheeks cool. Sand lifts in small veils, curling along the ground, creating whispering shapes that slide across camp. The camel snorts, rolling onto its knees with a sound halfway between irritation and resignation. A reminder that these sturdy animals carried entire civilizations' worth of goods unwillingly but steadfastly. Their padded feet press the earth with muffled thumps, a rhythm you recognize as sleepy heartbeat tempo. Asterisk, scholars still wonder how exactly to measure the Silk Road. Was it one single road? Not at all. It was thousands of paths, crisscrossed through mountains, deserts, villages, a web of trade, more than a string. Which questions history teases us with. Who carried the first silk? Who spoke the first word in a foreign tongue and was understood enough to start a friendship? And how many conversations, exactly, happened solely in gestures and smiles, under this very same starlight? Asterisk sleep comes quietly here, uninvited but welcome, as fires dim and stars fatten above the horizon. People bundle in rugs and cloaks, the scent of smoke clinging to their clothes. Somewhere, an argument about pepper and nutmeg fizzles into laughter before drifting into snoring. You lean back into the sand, warm beneath you, cool above you, both heavy and weightless at once. Long before clocks and alarms, the desert itself was the lullaby. Its silence deep enough to cradle dreams. Asterisk the Silk Road winds on beyond sight, disappearing into endless possibilities. Tonight, though, you simply rest beside its edge, lulled by bells, soothed by spice, and comforted by the thought that even in ancient times, bedtime was best spent with stories shared around a fire. The sand and dust of the caravan slip away as though swept gently from your shoulders. The air shifts cooler, lighter, tinged with something floral, yet earthy tea leaves drying in hidden baskets, blossoms floating unseen. The faint rattle of camel bells fades into the wistful hum of drums and zither. You lift your gaze, and the desert gives way to tall wooden gates, lit by lanterns, a grand city pressing against the night sky. You are drifting into Chang'an, the capital of the Tang dynasty, where midnight glows softly with paper lanterns bobbing in warm air. The streets here do not sleep when the sun does. Instead, they bloom into life the way fireflies dance above water. Lanterns hang in clusters from eaves, glowing in pinks, oranges, yellows, casting puddles of starlight onto cobbled paths. At your side, vendors line the streets with steaming pots of noodles, their broth gentle and fragrant, rolling up in waves that make your stomach ache with pleasant want. Skewers twist with candied hawthorn berries, red glossy, sticky, and you find yourself imagining them as the world's earliest equivalent of lollipops. Chang'an is vast. Its avenues are planned with orderly precision, stretching broad and clean, but the night blurs that neatness into intimacy. Soft lute music spills out of tea houses, where voices ring in poetry contests. Someone leans through a doorway, waving a sleeve as silken as moonlight, calling out riddles to strangers delighted to play along. An innkeeper clucks softly at you in Mandarin, gesturing toward steaming bowls waiting at tables. You sink into the sound as if into warm silk, languages, bells, and laughter blending into one gentle cloud around you. The Tang court loved entertainment, and you stumble curiously into a courtyard where acrobats are mid-performance, even though the hour is late. One twirls blazing hoops in the dark, sparks trailing behind like miniature constellations. Another balances on a pole, poised in stillness, before dropping gracefully into a somersault that leaves the crowd oddly hushed. These spectacles were the comfort food of tense nights, filling evenings with amazement and laughter before sleep came creeping. You watch, your chest warming quietly, like a candle finding a flame. One startling fact. Historians note the Tang capital supported people from all corners of the world. Central Asian merchants set up shops beside Chinese artisans. Buddhist monks crossed thousands of miles to chant their sutras here. Persian envoys carried carpets woven into labyrinths of dreamlike color. Chang'an was, in many ways, the Silk Road's heart, the place where threads converged and tangled into knots of human harmony. Walking here feels like slipping not just into a city, but into a human kaleidoscope, endlessly shifting, endlessly colorful. But for all its bustle, there are jokes hidden in its corners. You pass by a tea shop where musicians strum delicately. In one corner, a scholar explains loudly that tea is superior to wine for clear thought. Half the table groans Tang poets loved wine, perhaps a little too much. Li Bai, the immortal poet, wrote entire verses comparing moonlight to his cup, infusing drunkenness with melancholy beauty, and somewhere deep down, you suspect he might have rallied the tea crowd too, if only he'd sobered up first. You sip your own small cup of hot tea, mildly bitter, beautifully warming, and infinitely more sleep-inducing than Li Bai might admit. Nearby, lanterns float not just hung, but lifted into the sky. Great paper spheres, open at the base to a flickering flame, rise into the night, carrying painted prayers, scratched in calligraphy across their bellies. They vanish higher and higher until they blur with stars. Observing this, you're struck by the sense that maybe humans have always wanted to put their wishes into the sky, hoping the stars might pick up the delivery and file it with eternity. And yes, here comes another curious detailed pillow talk, literal this time. Temps elites were connoisseurs of fancy pillows. Carved porcelain ones, cooled for summer nights. Embroidered silk, stuffed with herbs. Some of these pillows were inscribed with poems about sleep itself, an elegant way of saying, "Good luck, sleepyhead, may you dream of lovely things." Compared to Egyptian stone headrests, Temps pillows feel like luxury incarnate, though you wonder if porcelain undercheek truly feels more restful than indulgent. You decide maybe the ancients sometimes valued artistry above spinal alignment. The crowd thins. Shop curtains draw closed, shutters creak into place. Yet, Chang'an doesn't truly fall silent. From behind latticed windows, you hear zithers plucked slowly, calmly, each note slipping like pebble drops into a pond. A paper umbrella leans abandoned against a door frame, catching lantern light faintly, before the glow folds fully into stillness. Historians debate endlessly what Chang'an felt like at the level of the ordinary citizen. We know of emperors, poets, envoys, exotic markets, and temples. But what about those closing shutters? Did the lantern maker's hands ache each night, proud yet weary? Did children fall asleep in bundles of quilts while performers outside still balanced flame on poles? We cannot hear them clearly now, but in silence, you sense their breathing rose along with the thousands of others. Beneath a shared night sky, you walk a little further before sitting at the edge of a fountain. Water ripples clear, reflecting the sky's lantern scars, mixing with stars themselves until you can no longer tell which are floating flame and which are distant suns. The air tastes of faint charcoal and tea leaves. The ground cools beneath you, seeping through your sandals like a lull. Around you, the performance of Chang'an slowly dims. But even in dimness, the joy lingers, lanterns shivering into absence, like a great city gently sighing goodnight. And there you sit with porcelain pillows in mind, warm tea in your belly, and the hum of Temps poetry circling overhead in invisible circles, a melody wrapped in midnight silk. The lanterns of Chang'an dim and fade as though someone snuffed them gently with 2 fingers, and the warmth of tea dissolves into the sharp scent of pine, smoke, and something unmistakably briny. The ground beneath you hardens from cobblestones to packed earth, creaking faintly with frost. Your body feels wrapped in wool. Your nose tingles with cold air that carries both wood smoke and the distant call of the sea. Welcome to the northern world of the Vikings, a place of hearthlight, shadows, and the strange comfort of too many furs piled onto one bed. Asterisk. You push open a heavy wooden door carved with spirals of beasts and knots that never end. Inside, the room glows golden with firelight. A longhouse. Beams tower overhead like the ribs of a great wooden whale. Smoke rising lazily toward the rafters before escaping through a neat gap in the roof. Benches line the sides, covered in furs bear reindeer, maybe something you'd rather not identify. The moment you step in, warmth wraps you like a woolen hug. You could cry from relief, except you'd freeze before the tear reached your cheek outside. Asterisk. The smell here is half stew, half soot, half damp woolen. Yes, in Viking math, halves don't always add up, but it's oddly reassuring. A cauldron hangs above the fire, simmering with fish, old roots, and the occasional mystery contribution. A woman stirs it with determined rhythm, every scrape sounding like an itchy lullaby for the hungry. Beside her, bread bakes in flat rounds, darkened by ash, filling the air with a heaviness that makes your eyelids droop. Asterisk. The longhouse hums with people. Men slouch into benches, hair braided with patience, and a lot of beeswax. You notice one man carefully smoothing his beard with a bone comb, as if grooming himself were a heroic saga of its own. Fashion mattered here. Vikings were often cleaner and more stylish than their European contemporaries. Weekly baths, bright tunics dyed in reds and blues, medals worked into brooch. You glance around and think, no wonder they made such an impression when they visited other lands. You shuffle closer to the fire and gently sit, the warmth licking your legs like a tame wolf set at your feet. A Skald the Viking storyteller raises his voice. It is gravelly, low, but steady, like the rolling of the sea. Recites a saga, words clipping with rhythm, recounting voyages across endless waters, ships like dragons weaving over storm crests, feasts in far-off lands. Everyone leans closer to catch his tale, for entertainment lives by voice tonight. No books here, only memories strung into verses carried through generations. The quirks appear, too, because even heroes were teased. The skald slips in a biting insult aimed at someone across the fire. Laughter cracks through the hall. Mugs slam against wood, mead sloshes golden onto tables. Insults were practically an art form here, called flighting. Duels of words that could sting more than swords if well crafted. Imagine bedtime stories with roast battles, and you'll understand the Viking method of keeping everyone awake until they're laughing too hard to stand. Your mug is refilled with mead. Honey wine, sticky and sweet, warming your chest like a blanket, unwrapped from the inside out. You sip slowly, eyelids softening, until the rhythmic clanging of wooden spoons on bowls begins to blur into music. And there you hear it, a harp, faint, played on a lyre-shaped instrument strung with gut. The notes ring brittle, but tender, almost like plucked icicles melting in air. It's a reminder that comfort was carved even from frozen nights. Here comes a curious fact. Archaeologists have found board games in Viking graves. Little sets of pieces for Hennefataf, a game of strategy, not unlike chess. And so, even amid icy storms and roaring battles, they liked to settle around fire, sip mead, and argue passionately over wooden tokens sliding across boards. You smile at that, warriors, who might postpone a raid until after one more round. Smoke curls upward, slow, hypnotic. The longhouse smells stew, wool, smoke. Meat thickens, until it feels like you could close your eyes and sleep within it forever. Children chase each other on the floorboards, the thump of their feet muffled by pelts. An old dog lies in the corner, thumping its tail with slow approval, as if to say, yes, this is the rhythm of the house. And yet, questions trail through history like smoke through rafters. Did every Viking longhouse sound like this, a balance of warmth, brash laughter, and flickering music? Or are we filling in the gaps with cozy imagination, smoothing over what reality may have been? Were they truly merry in nightly feasts, or simply too tired from harsh labor to do more than collapse? Historians debate what parts of the saga life were everyday practice, and what were bedtime and perhaps both are true. The hall hushes briefly, and a gust of wind sneaks in under the door, scattering smoke, rattling beams. Howling outside reminds you of the sea's earnest sound forever folding into Viking nights. You realize how strong the link was between land and water, how even this warm, golden refuge always echoed with the presence of waves that dictated when to leave, when to fight, when to return. The music resumes, soft and low now. Someone dozes against furs, cup rolling slowly from their hand. The fire bends with a gentle crackle, hushing the room back into stillness. Dogs sigh. Meat stews. Wood beams creak with the kind of fatigue that feels eternal. You pull your furs tighter and sink back into them, warmth spreading into every limb. This longhouse is not just a place, it is a blanket itself, a cradle of timber and wool and laughter. And with the drum of the sea beyond the walls, you feel your breath lengthen, your eyes soften, and sleep begin padding toward you, gentle as footsteps across frost. The crackle of the Viking fire dissolves, replaced by chirps that are sharper, more tropical. You blink against a dim glow of embers, and when your vision clears, there is no frost, no timber, no wool-smoky roof overhead. Instead, the air is wet, thick, and humming with life. Crickets trill continuously. From overhead, where branches seem to stretch infinitely into darkness, the sound of dripping leaves punctuates the night. The air smells green lush, like wet stone, moss, and flowers with petals the size of your hands. You are in the Maya world now, deep in the jungle, beneath temples that rise like giants from the canopy, their stone flanks washed in moonlight. Asterisk, you tilt your head back, and the structure before you dominates the skyline. Massive steps climb toward a temple platform, and behind it, the moon clings to the night like a pearl, turning vines into silver ropes. It's both imposing and strangely tranquil. Bats slip through the shadows, darting without sound, while far off, the low growl of a jaguar rumbles, just enough to remind you. The forests here have their own gods. Asterisk, at the base of the temple, market stalls still linger, even though night has come. Fruit rests in heaps, papayas and avocados, cacao beans in baskets woven from palm fibers. People laugh and trade in their low, rhythmic tones, a language filled with lilting syllables that seem to roll like streams. Children chase one another with clay toys, and elders lean against stone pillars carved with glyphs, tracing each mark with fingers, as though they're stroking the memory of the words into their palms. Asterisk here. Unlike Athens or Rome, knowledge does not huddle in scrolls, it bursts across temple walls. Every surface can sing a story. Rulers, rituals, calendars with cycles so precise modern mathematicians nod in admiration. And yet many of these glyphs stood hidden for centuries, as if they, too, were night creatures waiting for rediscovery. Today, scholars can read them, but not fully. Many blocks of meaning remain mysterious, endless unanswered whispers carved into stone. Tantalizing bedtime questions left without resolution. Asterisk, you lean closer to a carving of a king seated upon a throne, feathers erupting from his headdress, each plume perched impossibly high. The artistry is stunning, but you suspect the practicality of such headgear was questionable. A forgotten nobleman must have nodded off with his head at a perfectly uncomfortable angle, wishing for a smaller bird. Still, here, extravagant feathers were powered the quetzal birds, shimmering green tails seen as wealth greater than gold. A single feather could be worth an entire fortune, especially by candlelight. Asterisk nearby, someone prepares a drink and beckons you over. Cocoa beans are ground between smooth stones, mixed with chili and foam, poured into clay cups. You take a sip, bitter, sharp, entirely unlike your bedtime hot chocolate. It tingles on your tongue and awakens you for a moment, but then the warmth spreads, and soon you find it curiously calming. Chocolate here wasn't candy, was currency, ritual, vitality. They believed it connected them to gods, a sacred bitterness, more than a midnight treat. You sip again, letting it remind you what lifeblood might taste like if it were brewed into comfort. Asterisk drums start in the distance slow, booming, vibrating through the ground. Shadows against the temple steps grow tall with torchlight. Dancers move in feathered costumes, their shadows flickering against stone, bending and growing like spirits unbound. The rhythm is entrancing, meant to echo the heartbeats of gods, to remind dancers and listeners alike that they belonged to a universe alive with movement. You close your eyes, and the thump-thump-thump of the drum blurs until it nearly matches your own pulse, lulling you toward something soft and undefined. Asterisk, the Maya believed time itself was cyclical. Days, nights, lives, even gods recurred in repetitions, like moon phases that endlessly wax and wane. It makes you wonder, is this moment a return? Do you stand here because time has folded on itself, gently layering your night over theirs? Historians still debate exactly how common people related to these calendars, whether deeply or distantly. Did villagers check the stars like a farmer checks the weather app today? Or was the knowledge kept mostly for priests? The question hangs like mist in the moonlight net, but beautifully inviting. Asterisk, a man with paint streaked across his face waves at you to join a quieter corner, and you follow him to a scribe hunched over a desk lit by flickering resin torches. He scratches glyphs onto bark paper, lips moving as if whispering every syllable with his reed pen. The scent of burning copal resin fills your nose, sweet herbal, a smell you can almost lean into like a pillow. You watch the glyphs roll onto paper with steady hands, and realize this too is bedtime. The act of recording memory for the future, of leaving words and shapes behind for someone centuries away, who might one day sit here, tired and awed, whispering at the brightness of their meaning. Asterisk, the drums subside, one by one, until there's only the forest again, the endless chorus of insects, the sigh of branches, the roar of faraway water. The temple looms, patient, immovable, but soft in its moonlit glow. Children curl into blankets woven of bark fiber hammocks, swinging faintly in the night air. Smoke drifts up, curling toward stars that blink through branches. Asterisk, you sit on one of the massive temple steps, its cool stone pressing comfort into your back. Fireflies wink lazily above the grasses, some stubborn enough to stay close, framing even the darkness with scattered lights. And as the night deepens and the jungle hum encircles you entirely, you feel the world itself telling you to rest, to cycle back into breathing, to let the calendar turn you quietly toward dreams. The lanterns of Chang'an dim and fade as though someone snuffed them gently with 2 fingers, and the warmth of tea dissolves into the sharp scent of pine, smoke, and something unmistakably briny. The ground beneath you hardens from cobblestones to packed earth, creaking faintly with frost. Your body feels wrapped in wool, your nose tingles with cold air that carries both wood smoke and the distant call of the sea. Welcome to the northern world of the Vikings, a place of hearthlight, shadows, and the strange comfort of too many furs piled onto one bed. Asterisk. You push open a heavy wooden door, carved with spirals of beasts and knots that never end. Inside, the room glows golden with firelight. A longhouse. Beams tower overhead like the ribs of a great wooden whale, smoke rising lazily toward the rafters before escaping through a neat gap in the roof. Benches line the sides, covered in furs bear reindeer, maybe something you'd rather not identify. The moment you step in, warmth wraps you like a woolen hug. You could cry from relief, except you'd freeze before the tear reached your cheek outside. Asterisk, the smell here is half stew, half soot, half damp woolen. Yes, in Viking math, halves don't always add up, but it's oddly reassuring. A cauldron hangs above the fire, simmering with fish, old roots, and the occasional mystery contribution. A woman stirs it with determined rhythm, every scrape sounding like an itchy lullaby for the hungry. Beside her, bread bakes in flat rounds, darkened by ash, filling the air with a heaviness that makes your eyelids droop. Asterisk, the longhouse hums with people. Men slouch into benches, hair braided with patience, and a lot of beeswax. You notice one man carefully smoothing his beard with a bone comb, as if grooming himself were a heroic saga of its own. Fashion mattered here. Vikings were often cleaner and more stylish than their European contemporaries. Weekly baths, bright tunics, dyed in reds and blues, metals worked into brooches. You glance around and think, no wonder they made such an impression when they visited other lands. Asterisk, you shuffle closer to the fire and gently sit, the warmth licking your legs like a tame wolf set at your feet. Askald the Viking storyteller raises his voice. It is gravelly, low, but steady, like the rolling of the sea. Eresites. A saga words, clipping with rhythm, recounting voyages across endless waters, ships like dragons, weaving over storm crests, feasts in far-off lands. Everyone leans closer to catch his tale, for entertainment lives by voice tonight. No books here, only memories strung into verses carried through generations. Asterisk, the quirks appear, too, because even heroes were teased. The scald slips in a biting insult aimed at someone across the fire. Laughter cracks through the hall. Mugs slam against wood, mead sloshes golden onto tables. Insults were practically an art form here, called flighting. Duels of words that could sting more than swords if what. Imagine bedtime stories with roast battles, and you'll understand the Viking method of keeping everyone awake until they're laughing too hard to stand. Asterisk, your mug is refilled with mead, honey wine sticky and sweet, warming your chest like a blanket unwrapped from the inside out. You sip slowly, eyelids softening, until the rhythmic clanging of wooden spoons on bowls begins to blur into music. And there you hear it, a harp, faint, played on a lyre-shaped instrument, strung with gut. The notes ring brittle, but tender, almost like plucked icicles melting in air. It's a reminder that comfort was carved even from frozen nights. Asterisk. Here comes a curious fact. Archaeologists have found board games in Viking graves, little sets of pieces for Hennefatov, a game of strategy, not unlike chess. And so, even amid icy storms and roaring battles, they liked to settle around fire, sip mead, and argue passionately over wooden tokens sliding across boards. You smile at that warriors who might postpone a raid until after one more round. Asterisk, smoke curls upward, slow, hypnotic. The longhouse smells to wool, smoke. Meat thickens, until it feels like you could close your eyes and sleep within it forever. Children chase each other on the floorboards, the thump of their feet muffled by pelts. An old dog lies in the corner, thumping its tail with slow approval, as if to say, yes, this is the rhythm of the house. Asterisk, and yet, questions trail through history like smoke through rafters. Did every Viking longhouse sound like this, a balance of warmth, brash laughter, and flickering music? Or are we filling in the gaps with cozy imagination, smoothing over what reality may have been? Were they truly merry in nightly feasts, or simply too tired from harsh labor to do more than collapse? Historians debate what parts of the saga life were everyday practice and what were bedtime and perhaps both are true. Asterisk, the hall hushes briefly, and a gust of wind sneaks in under the door, scattering smoke, rattling beams. Howling outside reminds you of the sea's Nirnesis sound forever folding into Viking nights. You realize how strong the link was between land and water, how even this warm, golden refuge always echoed with the presence of waves that dictated when to leave, when to fight, when to return. Asterisk, the music resumes. Soft and low now. Someone dozes against furs, cup rolling slowly from their hand. The fire bends with a gentle crackle, hushing the room back into stillness. Dogs sigh. Meat stews. Wood beams creak with the kind of fatigue that feels eternal. Asterisk, you pull your furs tighter and sink back into them, warmth spreading into every limb. This longhouse is not just a place, it is a blanket itself, a cradle of timber and wool and laughter. And with the drum of the sea beyond the walls, you feel your breath lengthen, your eyes soften, and sleep begin padding toward you, gentle as footsteps across frost. The parchment pages rustle shut, and the scent of ink fades into something entirely different. The faint sharpness of pine, mixed with the soft trickle of water. Your ears catch bamboo creaking gently in the night breeze. Cicadas singing with calm determination, and somewhere, a bamboo flute sighing in long, slow notes. You've walked out of the desert and into the serene hush of a Japanese garden during the era of the samurai. Asterisk, the garden is spare, but perfect. Gravel stretches in neat lines, each ripple raked into deliberate swirls that mimic water even, though no stream runs across them. Small stone lanterns stand guard at the edges, their surfaces moss-clad, their insides glowing softly with flickering flames. You hear a little splash as a carp stirs lazily in a pond, its scales catching the lantern light like coins dropped just beneath the water's surface. The air smells faintly green, like wet leaves, as though the whole garden had just been rinsed in fresh rain. Asterisk, a samurai sits at the edge of the pond, armor set aside in tidy pieces, replaced with a simple robe. His sword leans against the wooden walkway, but tonight, no one appears to need it. Instead, he writes slowly with brush and ink, pausing often as if waiting for permission from the night itself. His presence is not intimidating, but quietly absorbing. You realize in this world, the warrior was often also the poet, tasked not only with defense but also with the pursuit of beauty, balance, and perhaps the right 14 syllables whispered into his notebook. Asterisk, he reads aloud softly, lines shaped like dew on bamboo leaves. It isn't a war cry, or even pride. It's about a falling blossom, a drifting cloud. The subtle joke here. These poems occasionally had a playful side. One might describe the cherry blossom as noble, the moon as eternal, then sneak in a sudden observation about someone's clumsy sandals squeaking too loudly in the quiet. Because even in samurai circles, humor elbowed its way in. Asterisk, a steaming pot of tea rests beside him, its aroma earthy, grassy, almost smoky. The Japanese tea ceremony was, and still is, a performance of subtlety. Small gestures, precise movements, silence as much a part of the ritual as words. You're invited to kneel, though your ankles complain almost instantly. Bowls are exchanged carefully, hands folding precisely, steam rising in little wisps like dragon breath, curling lazily in dim air. Your first sip scalds your lips slightly. A universal experience, proving that no matter how timeless rituals are, they don't prevent clumsiness. But the taste is gentle, grounding. Green tea feels less like flavor, and more like being reminded that sometimes hot water is enough. Asterisk, the garden around you deepens into stillness, and with it, stories wind through memory. Japanese gardens during this period weren't simply decoration. They were spiritual reflections of the universe, designed to suggest mountains in miniature, water in gravel, infinity in careful pruning. Walking through one becomes less about where your feet are and more about what your breathing notices. And tonight, that rhythm step, breath, stone, water forms a lullaby all its own. Asterisk, a small koto joins the flute now, strings vibrating like ripples in air. The music slips across the garden, soft and halting, occasionally stopping as if pondering its next note. Unlike the Greek markets or Roman baths, this sound doesn't demand conversation. It asks for quiet. Not the loud hush of command, but the softer hush of agreement. Yes, you will listen. You will let this moment fold you into silence. Asterisk, there are curious details, tucked in every corner. Samurai didn't just fight or write, they served their lords with a code. Bushido, that demanded loyalty, honor, and restraint. Yet historians debate how truly universal it was. Was it an actual strict living code, practiced diligently in quiet gardens like this? Or do we sometimes exaggerate its poetry, smoothing over the rougher and less glamorous edges of daily duty? We don't always know the line between myth and life, and perhaps that's fitting, because nights like this exist in the space between both. Asterisk A. Bamboo water fountain tilts in the garden near you, filling slowly with trickling water, before suddenly spilling its liquid into a rock basin, then resetting with another hollow sigh. The sound repeats in rhythm, a gentle metronome, marking time with patience. And with each tilt, each splash, you feel heaviness in your body spread luxuriously, like your limbs have been listening all along for this rhythm to remind them how to relax. Asterisk. You glance up to see the samurai now silent, his scroll rolled away, his tea bowl empty. He gazes not at you, not at the pond, but at the sky. The moon has risen fully, trembling silver across every leaf and ripple. A cherry tree nearby wears blossoms pale as breath, petals dropping one by one into the pond's dark surface. For a moment, you realize all of this, the raked gravel, the blossoms, the flute, the tiwas, a theater arranged just for stillness, a stage to welcome silence as the night's honored guest. Asterisk, the grounds grow quieter. The cicadas hush gradually. The bamboo tap sets the only steady beat. A lantern flickers in the moss. Somewhere, a soft laugh echoes from behind a sliding paper wall, then fades. The air rests against you like a silk cloak. Lightweight, but enough to shield you from drifting too far, too fast. Asterisk, you kneel closer to the pond, watching carp swirl beneath. Their slow arcs repeating, repeating, repeating. The night presses in, not heavy, but tender. Perhaps this is the final poem, unspoken. The silence and the still pond. The awareness of breath beside water. As petals float, and time lets itself soften, you to feel the rhythm of rest arrive. As slowly, as surely, as bamboo filling until it tips. The water splash in the garden basin still echoes faintly behind you, but the air grows cooler, dustier, and heavier, carrying with it a new perfume-warm beeswax, charcoal smoke, and the unmistakable fragrance of ink rubbed into parchment. The cicadas hush completely, replaced by the faint drone of chanting. A sound so steady, you wonder if it could go on until the next sunrise without a single break. You step into the dim glow of a stone corridor. Torches flickering against walls so thick, you know they'll outlast seasons, kings, and probably the future itself. You've wandered into a medieval abbey, where monks are bent over parchment by candlelight, determined to copy every syllable as though it were urgent bedtime reading for the entire world. Asterisk. The room opens up around you, a scriptorium. Long wooden desks stretch in rows, parchment spread like pale skin under the glow of beeswax candles. Monks sit hunched in silence, their brown robes folded neatly, only their quills moving in soft scratches across the page. The sound is hypnotic. Scratch, lift, scratch, sigh, the rhythm of patience incarnate. The air is thick with incense, intended to drown out the smell of sweat and ink, though you're definitely aware of both. Asterisk 1. Monk dips his quill into oak gall ink, a dark, permanent black made from wasps and tree growths. He lifts his face briefly to squint at you, probably deciding whether you're another novice who wandered in late to work, and then promptly returns to outlining elaborate blue vines along the page margins. His illustrations bloom with flowers and curling leaves, delicate distractions against the cold stone surrounding him. You step closer and realize this is how medieval manuscripts gained their vibrant illuminations, with someone's cricked neck and steady hand at 2 in the morning. Asterisk, the overall atmosphere is reverent, but, curiously, not entirely quiet. Someone coughs. Another monk drops a book with a smack, muttering something under his breath too low for you to catch. These scriptoriums were filled with ordinary men, not mystical copy machines. Some sped through their work with half-hearted strokes. Others doodled little faces or animals in the margins with just enough subtlety to seem accidental. And yes, history preserves examples. One monk even scrawled a complaint in the margin of his manuscript. "Oh, my hand." You can almost hear the weary sigh. It's oddly comforting to think that, even 800 years ago, people resisted deadlines while nursing sore wrists. Asterisk, a bell tolls faintly in the corridor outside, the sound rich and hollow, reverberating off stone walls. The monks pause, their scratching, close eyes for a moment of silent prayer, then reopen them and dive immediately back into ink. Their discipline is both calming and intimidating. Perhaps it's easier to maintain such composure when your primary companion is a quill. Asterisk, the oil lamps shimmer, warming the cold stone around you with buttery light. Overhead, the roof of the abbey squeaks faintly, as if wind is testing its timbers. Monastic life here was strict hours ordered around bells, prayers, meals, more prayer, more copying. But tucked inside that repetition is a kind of meditative rhythm. You could get lost here, not just in work but in the comfort of predictability. You breathe in the steady pace, and it feels like a lullaby sung by schedules. Asterisk, and then comes the curious quirk beer. Monks brewed it daily, sometimes stronger, sometimes weak as water. It was safer than untreated streams, and in many places, it was consumed as often and as easily as bread. Imagine, candles glow, parchment is smoothed, quills scratch, and a clay cup of ale rests casually beside the manuscript of a gospel. A thirst quencher, a mild morale booster, ironically part of holy routine. Night after night, beer was punctuation for faith and fatigue. Asterisk, one monk nearby dips his quill, then pauses. He tilts his head, sighs heavily, and at the edge of his page draws the tiniest animal, a playful rabbit with large ears, nibbling at the decorated vines. He smirks at his own rebellion before sliding his hood further over his face in mock secrecy. You grin silently. Even cloistered halls could not suppress a practical joke against long hours. Asterisk, there's another mystery that lingers in these halls. For all this discipline, all these hours devoted to copying, historians still wonder about what was lost, which books did not survive, which texts were ignored or even intentionally left uncopied. Every glowing manuscript we see today represents another, perhaps forgotten, erased by silence or simply skipped by a tired hand. This question stretches longer than the echoing corridors themselves. What did we miss out on? Left forever in the shadows? Asterisk, outside, a night wind creeps into the room, dancing flames into flickers. The shadows grow long, stretching across parchment and wood. The monks continue, unperturbed, their voices a soft hum of Latin phrases rising now, like a collective, sleepy hymn. The rhythm settles around you like wool blankets, predictable, patient, endless. Asterisk, you sink against the edge of a wooden desk, letting the candlelight brush your face, the scrape of quills lull your ears, the chant tumble like a repetitive lullaby. Breathing sinks to the pace of ink, in with the dip, out with the stroke, and soon you, too, are folded into this nightly monastery rhythm where even words fall asleep in neat rows of script. The chant of Latin prayers dissolves, replaced by something richer, darker, an aroma so thick it nearly curls itself into your lungs. Coffee, roasted slow and deep, the scent wrapped in spice and smoke. The cold stone of the abbey floor gives way to smooth tiles, patterned like painted carpets, warming softly under lamps. You slip quietly into another world of night and story, the Ottoman coffee house, where voices linger as long as the coffee itself low-lit, buzzing, and endless. Asterisk, the room is wide but welcoming, its walls tiled in blues and golds, patterns repeating endlessly as though geometry were just another bedtime song. Lamps of brass throw a honey warmth across faces. People recline on divans, stuffed in corners. Others gather at carved wooden tables, set low to the ground, spilling dice and whispers in equal measure. The air swirls with the sweet sharp perfume of cardamom, mingling with the darker richness of thick coffee, poured in little porcelain cups. Asterisk, a server pauses to hand you one of those cups. You lift it delicate, weightless, except for the heaviness of its contents. Just one sip and you understand. This coffee wasn't designed for casual sipping. Stout, bitter, silken sludgy at the bottom. It jolts your tongue, then melts back into calm warmth, threading through your chest. Sleepiness doesn't fade exactly, it morphs into its cousin, a dreamy trance. The state where stories multiply more easily than yawns. Asterisk, coffee houses in the Ottoman world were more than drink stations. They were theaters without a stage, libraries without books, classrooms without chalkboards. The drink was simply the backdrop for debates and tales. And sure enough, you hear it in the corner, a storyteller gesturing wildly, his hand catching the light as he scrolls through a tale about jinn who ride the desert winds, or heroes who trick entire armies with nothing but witty lines. His voice rises, drops, sways like the flame of the lamp above him. Around him, men lean closer, not because they can't hear, but because stories taste better when they touch the edges of your breath. Asterisk, a game flickers next, as dice hit wood, tavla, backgammon, rounds and rounds of fate, clattering into little wooden squares. A man sighs dramatically as his opponent wins again, then leans back against pillows with theatrical misery. The crowd bursts into laughter. You marvel at the timelessness of board game defeats. How across centuries and cultures humans have retained the same exasperated groans. It's oddly soothing, a shared joke with history's living room. Asterisk, curious fact, coffeehouses were once banned. More than once, in the Ottoman Empire. Leaders fretted that strong coffee and even stronger conversation were dangerous combinations. Too much chatter, too much gathering, too much thinking. Yet the bans always failed. You can smell why this scent is undefeated. The pull of warmth, talk, laughter, and bittersweetness was too powerful, too human. And so, despite rules written in palaces, the lamps here still lit, the cups still clinked, and stories still spun out like smoke rings into the night. Asterisk, a musician arrives with an oud, his fingers plucking slow chords, each note round and deep, humming like river stones, sinking carefully into water. The rhythm is not lively. It's closer to liquid, sliding down around your ears. Someone else joins with a frame drum, light and steady, heartbeat soft at the edges. And suddenly, even amid laughter, the mood thickens like honey, grounded, careful, entrancing. Asterisk, you glance again at your porcelain cup, admiring the irony. In Europe, coffee was treated as dangerous stimulant worthy of suspicion. But here, porcelain cradled, it feels almost like liquid meditation. Its foam clings to the rim like a second moon, its base hiding a sludge thick enough for fortune tellers to swirl and predict futures. You set it down carefully. Perhaps your fortune tonight would simply read, "We'll nap peacefully soon, but not before another story." Asterisk, walking further through the room, you notice a little quirk. Painted walls displaying ships and cities far beyond this empire. Istanbul was not only a heart of commerce, but also a mirror of the world's edges. Imagine each coffeehouse as a gateway. Sailors, merchants, scholars, each bringing news from faraway lands. Tonight, you hear murmurs of caravans from Persia, whispers about Venetian ships, gossip about spices edging around Africa. The coffeehouse is not simply caffeinated. It is cosmopolitan, at ease with its lanterns casting global maps onto steaming cups. Asterisk, yet scholars still debate, were the coffeehouses heralds of free speech, or simply entertainment parlors? Did political dissent truly take root in these smoky rooms, or are we romanticizing them as candlelit brave spaces across empire lines? The truth may straddle both. The answer hovers like the scent of cardamom, powerful, undeniable, but hard to trap in one direction. Asterisk, the hour grows heavier. Dice clatter less often. A final story is told, poorly but with such enthusiasm that it still earns claps. Musicians pluck their last low notes. Lamps flicker lower, turning the blue tiles dim aquamarine, gold sinking into gentle bronze. The crowd thins, shuffling into cool streets beyond, leaving faint trails of laughter and clove smoke curling into the alleyway air. Asterisk, you pause before leaving. The server smiles faintly, sliding another porcelain cup toward you, then gestures at the dregs pooled thick at the bottom of the first. Fortunes, his wink seems to say, but you resist. You don't need to know the future. Nights this warm, this familiar, are enough. Asterisk, you carry the scent of roasted beans with you as you step outside, where the cobblestones echo softly with your shoes. Behind you, the coffeehouse exhales its last sigh of the evening, an ember fading into the Ottoman skyproof, that conversations, like dreams, stretch further than anyone intends, but always end in silence. The warmth of roasted coffee lingers on your tongue for a moment, then drifts away like steam dissolving into thin air. The tiled Ottoman walls fade, the cobbled alleys ripple, and the scent of spice is slowly replaced by something cleaner, sharper thin mountain air, cool earth, and the quiet whisper of water streaming down terraces. Around you, dawn begins pale light, rising behind jagged peaks, painting the horizon in layers of pink, orange, and the soft blues of sky not yet awake. You stand among the Andes, high and clear above the clouds, where the Inca world greets each morning with stones, silence, and a chorus of simple daily rituals. Your feet crunch against smooth stone paths, each slab cut and placed so precisely that even now, centuries later, you can't fit a blade between them. These stones do not wobble, do not shift. They sit as if dropped into eternity. You crouch for a closer look, running your hand along cool granite, fitted seamlessly without mortar, as though the rock had been poured like honey into moldy gaps. Historians still marvel at how these massive blocks were shaped, hoisted, and locked together. No steel, no cranes, just hands, ramps, and patience the width of an empire. You rise again and glance outward. Terraced fields unfurl down the mountainsides in sweeping layers, carved into the landscape like great staircases for gods. Rows upon rows of potatoes, maize, quinoa bred and cared for by Inca farmers who coaxed life out of impossible altitudes. The terraces gleam golden in dawn's light, alive with little patches of dew catching sparks of the sun. Farmers bend over them now, humming softly, their voices mingling with the first calls of mountain birds. The songs aren't loud, but they drift like a lullaby written for both soil and spirit. Potatoes humble, earthy, yet revered are sung to like children. You chuckle as you picture an Inca lullaby. Sleep well, little tuber. Grow big enough to feed 1,000. Nearby, a llama shifts, snorting softly, adorned with bright tassels knotted into its thick wool. Its eyes regard you with casual disdain, the same look llamas have likely given outsiders for centuries. Behind it, alpacas tread gently through the grass, their wool later destined for blankets, woven as intricate as temple walls. The air smells faintly of hay, fur, and the cool mineral tang of morning springs rushing through carved stone channels, another feat of Inca design, where water was guided carefully from mountain peaks through cities, gardens, and baths. The heart of the city stirs more fully now. Women spread brightly woven cloths covered with maize cakes and steaming bowls of chino freeze-dried potatoes made to last seasons, sharp on the tongue but rich in sustenance. A group of young men polish their slings, laughing softly, tossing pebbles with practiced precision. No swords, no bows, just woven cords and accuracy, mighty enough to knock birds from the sky. And while they boast in good spirit, one accidentally smacks a doorway. The llama, unimpressed, flicks an ear as though to say, "Try harder." Curious detail. Inca runners, the chasqui, stand scattered at intervals along winding paths. Each carries a small pouch and a wooden baton, ready to sprint at a moment's notice. Messages here traveled not by parchment or rider, but by a series of marathoners sprinting up and down the empire's arteries of road. They could cover hundreds of miles in days, their lungs seasoned by thin air, their legs numb with discipline. Imagine being jolted awake at dawn. Your turn deliver news of potatoes. You respect their labor, but quietly hope your time-traveling privileges excuse you from that particular assignment. The temple, at the heart of this settlement, sparkles faintly as the sun crests. Its walls are sheathed in sheets of gold so bright you almost squint. For the Inca, gold wasn't currency so much as radiance, the sweat of the sun god, a way to let light live among the people. The stone beneath it still glows warm, as though morning dressed itself here first, before spilling across the Andes. You reach out a hand and feel heat sink slowly into your palm. Sunlight stored in metal, pressing steadiness into your body. Scholarship poses questions here too. Historians still wonder, how was so much knowledge of farming, stonework, astronomy, and weaving conveyed across an empire without written words? The Inca instead used quipu, intricate chords of knots and colors, each string a memory encoded. Numbers, perhaps narratives, woven into strands. Was it bookkeeping alone, or also storytelling? The knots dangle in mystery, and you imagine fingers flying across them in careful patterns before bedtime. A language of thread rocking into meaning. The morning grows brighter. Hawks sweep across the sky, their wings flashing white in the rising sun. Below, the terraces shimmer, alive and orderly, each row humming with growth. Far in the distance, snow still caps mountaintops in glittering silence, their peaks seeming close enough to powder with sugar. You draw a breath, crisp and sharp, and exhale slowly, watching it vanish as though the mountains consumed your sigh themselves. The household surrounding you wake. Smoke climbs lazily from tiny chimneys. Children chase guinea pigs through doorways, their squeaks punctuating what might be the Inca household version of an alarm clock. A woman working at her loom pulls threads taut, weaving red and yellow into endless diamonds, her shuttle tapping steady in rhythm itself, a kind of percussion lull. Threads overlap, cross, tighten, all combining into patterns meant not only to clothe, but to encode history itself. Her hands work with such patience you suspect she measures time in yarn rather than hours. More jamas grumble, more children giggle. The terraces hum with soft hoeing. Yet above it all, the Andes remain still, wide, and humming gently with wind. The entire scene stretches vast, yet holds you secure, as if lying inside the bowl of a giant hand. You pause one last time before leaving, touching your fingertips gently to the stone wall beside you. Its surface is smooth, its lines so seamless your skin tingles against it. There is no mortar, no glue, just perfection fitted by hands that believed permanence belonged not to palaces alone, but to each stone of life itself. The sun rises brighter, flooding the terraces, filling the city square, glinting against gold, and warming the mist away from the valleys below. And you, too, feel warmed but softly, as though grand mountains wrapped you in a woven blanket and whispered, "Breathe slowly. Sleep if you like. The sun will climb whether or not you're watching." The sharp Andean air slips quietly from your lungs, and soon the mountains, terraces, and llama complaints all dissolve into the faint click of gears, the rustle of lace, and the muted puff of coal smoke drifting under velvet curtains. The ground beneath you smooths into polished wooden floorboards, creaking politely underfoot. You glance up and you are in a Victorian parlor, mid-19th century, a room bursting with invention, etiquette, and just the right amount of clutter to make you wonder whether anyone here actually sits comfortably. Asterisk. The walls are covered in patterned wallpaper that somehow manages to make roses look imposing. Gas lamps hiss gently in their brass sconces, throwing golden halos across shelves lined with dusty books, porcelain trinkets, and a peculiar chair that looks suspiciously short but still demands the title chaise longue. It's the famed fainting couch, half sofa, half therapy bed, popular for dramatic gestures after too tight corsets or awkward conversations you couldn't quite handle standing up. You run your hand across its upholstery and can't help but chuckle at the idea of furniture made specifically for swooning. Entire companies surely survived thanks to the Victorian commitment to melodrama. Asterisk in another corner. A gentleman fiddles proudly with a new device, two photographs angled side by side, and when you peer through it suddenly 3D. Victorians marveled at this illusion, giddy that their parlor could hold not only furniture, but an early ancestor of VR goggles. You try it yourself. The photo shows an alpine vista, and for a moment it feels you've swapped one mountain for another. Only this one comes without any risk of altitude sickness, Asterisk, the room smells faintly of coal mixed with lavender. A kettle whistles sharply before a maid settles it beside teacups so fine they look like they'd faint at the first clumsy touch. Steam curls delicately upward, wrapping itself around the chatter in the room. Guests sip, stir, and glance at newspapers, news of telegraphs and locomotives weaving the modern world tighter every day. Someone recites proudly that a train, once an idea of impossible speed, can now carry letters faster than any rider. Another insists the telegraph is the death of mystery, though he's secretly delighted at the idea of instant communication. Everywhere you look, the parlor hums not in grand speeches, but in little marvels, gadgets, trains, wires, chairs that coax modernity into something cozy. Asterisk, but innovation wasn't all delightful. Against one wall sits something called a mechanical exerciser, resembling equal parts rocking horse and broom closet. Its intended purpose is to improve circulation by shaking its rider in curious jostling ways. You're almost pleased the machine no longer functions. It looks like the kind of invention a person endured once before, swearing off home fitness forever. Victorians, ever inventive, churned out contraptions both practical and perplexing, as if innovation were less about solving needs and more about filling parlors with polite conversation starters. Asterisk. You glance toward the shelves again. Books crowd every inch, but curiosities nestle between them. Clockwork insects, seashells, miniature steam engines. Victorians adored collecting, cataloging, and cataloging their collections. Cabinets of curiosity-filled houses, each item dragged from colonial travels or local markets. Each object arranged neatly to inspire wonder. The fossil rests under glass in this parlor, its jagged outline whispering of ancient seas. You can almost picture a hostess casually remarking, "Oh, that? Just a 300-million-year-old fish. Sugar." Asterisk. Music drifts softly from the next room, a pianoforte played with gentle caution. The notes rising and falling like a lull more than a performance. Someone hums along, out of key, but in this quiet moment, with gaslight flickering across patterned carpets. The world feels impossibly still, even as time itself whirs in gears and engines outside. Asterisk. Here comes the quirk that invites a smile. Victorians adored new inventions, but many were laughably impractical. Patents exist for devices like the revolving teapot stand, because swiveling your wrist was obviously too taxing, or the anti-garrote umbrella fitted with hidden blades in newspapers as both fashionable and, well, stabby. Some of these contraptions never took off, thankfully, for umbrella users everywhere, but they paint the parlor in sharp relief, a society both charmingly serious and absurdly optimistic. Asterisk. Even the fainting couch feels like metaphor. The Victorians built their age of progress under a thick quilt of lace, nerves, and exaggeration. They wanted invention bold, but emotions tidy. A swoon here, a gear there. Etiquette versus progress, all circling under the lamps each evening. Asterisk. Questions remain. Were these evenings truly restful? Did Victorians lean back in goslet parlors actually feeling soothed? Or did the pressure of etiquette exhaust them further? Historians still squint skeptically. For every cozy melody, there might have been dozens of careful curtsies and forced pleasant conversations. Crafting tranquility from utter restraint, the truth may hum between both possibilities, lingering as surely as that faint whistle of the kettle. Asterisk. The fire in the grate spits softly now, shadows lengthening across embroidered carpets. The stereoscope rests abandoned on a table, fainting couch unoccupied for once. Inventions scattered casually across the room. Guests lower their voices to a hush. Even the mechanical exerciser looms more quietly, its bizarre promise fading into shadows. Asterisk. You sink into a proper armchair at last. One not built for fainting, but for sitting deeply. The upholstery swallows you with the patience of a grandmother's hug. Above the lamps hiss, gently, their glow softening toward sleep. You close your eyes, and the parlor's stillness flattens every line into comfort. Lace curtains still swaying, teacups cooling, coal smoke drifting into some forgotten corner. The century hums with invention, but tonight it hums you gently toward rest, as though every gadget secretly longed to be a lullaby machine. The hush of velvet-curtained parlors softens and fades. The tea steam vanishes, the faint rattle of gears unwinds, and in their place you begin to hear something new, brass, warm and round, sliding against wood and velvet, a trumpet sighs low, then climbs upward like a candle flame that flares and dips. A muted piano picks out a steady sway, rolling beneath voice and laughter. When you open your eyes, you are no longer in a Victorian sitting room, you are in Harlem, early 20th century, where night itself breathes in jazz and exhales rhythm. Asterisk, the club's entrance creaks as you push inside. Velvet curtains part, heavy and thick, muffling the street noise behind you. But on the other side, the room blooms open. Tables pressed close, candlelight floating in glass, red wallpaper gilded by shadow. People lean together over drinks, shoulders brushing, laughter weaving through the trumpet's echo. This is both crowded and intimate, a universe organized around sound. Asterisk, the piano keeps time, steady, like a heartbeat trying not to break into joy. The bass hums low, grounding the air into your bones. And then voices, rich with poetry. A man leans over the microphone and spills words that don't just tell a story, they move it, bending syllables to melody. Harlem in this moment breathes literature, jazz, art together, not apart. You sip something from the glass in front of you, ginger ale tonight. Don't worry. Bedtime awaits, and let it linger sweet on your tongue while drums shuffle in the background, graceful as footsteps on a city sidewalk. Asterisk, the tables hold poets scribbling on backs of programs, sketch artists sliding pencils in wide arcs across scrap paper, couples leaning into each other, whispering dreams. Jazz isn't just sound here, it's life being rewritten nightly, turning fatigue into swing and starlight into something audible. You're not a visitor anymore, not entirely. You sway gently with the crowd. Asterisk, curious detail. Some Harlem rent parties were fueled by jazz. Nights just like this, living room gatherings, where musicians played loud. Neighbors poured in, and the dollars collected at the door went straight to the landlord. Imagine your rent being paid by saxophone solos and impromptu dance contests, and a fourth-floor walk-up. In so many ways, the renaissance of art here thrived on necessity, turned into celebration. The fact that so much brilliance erupted from survival makes it burn all the brighter. Asterisk, your eyes wander to the stage again. The trumpet bends notes so low, you swear it's groaning like an old door, then leaps high, laughing against the ceiling. The pianist bites his lip, loses himself in chords, fingers blurring faster than you can follow. The drummer brushes the snare like someone whispering secrets down a long hallway. You realize the night is built like a heartbeat, full of syncopations, pauses, and sighs. It doesn't just ask you to listen. It asks you to breathe differently, longer, slower, with sway. Asterisk, your chair is soft, upholstered in threadbare velvet, and your fingers trace idle spirals on its arm. All around, cigarette smoke curls lazily upward, fragile as thoughts dissolving with exhaustion. Somewhere nearby, a woman hums with the song, eyes closed, not even aware that her body rocks slightly with every beat. A couple stands, dancing small steps in place, not showy, but fluid, as though sleepwalking through music. Asterisk, could all this energy, sound, and celebration have truly been this consistent? Historians debate. Were Harlem nights always vibrant, or have we amplified them into non-stop legend after the fact? Memory loves to exaggerate. Even jazz sometimes bends notes into something larger than itself. Perhaps there were lulls, tired nights, missed beats, but then again, when the record spins, when the trumpet falters only to rise brighter, it's not impossible to believe the memory might still be true. History might not just be facts. Sometimes it's rhythm preserved across decades. Asterisk, as the set winds down. Applause erupts, but not too loudly, more an embrace than an eruption. The candles flicker with sudden drafts. Laughter bubbles, brief and low. Someone lifts a glass across the room and nods to no one in particular. You let the scene imprint itself on your eyelids. Velvet brass, rhythm, hushed voices beneath soaring notes. Asterisk, the pianist closes the lid. The trumpet rests against its chair. The club exhales along with its audience. Outside, Harlem hums, street lamps glowing, couples wandering home. The city itself refusing stillness, but cloaking itself in a rhythm more muted. You step outside too. The February air is crisp, but not cutting. It wakes you gently, and the last fragments of jazz leak into the night like drops of warm syrup poured into cool silence. Asterisk, you pause under a lamp. Inhale deeply. This city feels different, not eternal like stone ziggurats, or ordered like Roman baths, but alive in a way that insists tomorrow will hum again. For now, though, the music dims. The night hushes, and your body feels heavier, lulled not just by melody, but by centuries of stories settling warmly against your chest. Asterisk, and now, as Harlem's night softens into silence, your journey through centuries eases toward its resting place. You've wandered deserts and riverbanks, temples and parlors, gardens and libraries, and now the weight of those worlds has folded itself like blankets around you. You are no longer walking. You are simply still. Asterisk, breathe in slowly. Feel the air glide into your chest, not hurried, not heavy, just enough. Let it slip out even slower, lower, and longer, until your shoulders melt down like wax beside a candle flame. The histories hum gently inside you, no longer loud with debate or music, no longer bustling with trade or ritual. Each one has pressed its warmth into you, already Mesopotamia's fire, Egypt's river, Rome's steam, the Silk Road's dust-laden stars. Now those voices have grown quiet, each sealing their story and handing it to your breath to keep safe until tomorrow. Asterisk, imagine your body now stretched across a wide, soft field under a velvet night sky. Overhead, stars hang closer than usual, not points of fire, but lanterns, steady and mellow. A breeze slides past, never colder than comfort, never sharper than ease. The ground cradles you, shapes itself toward you, as if the earth has remembered your exact outline and is relieved you've returned. Asterisk, it is safe now. No pages need copying, no ships need sailing, no terraces need tending. You have stepped through history and found your place on the quiet edge of it, a listener resting after the stories have all been told. Asterisk, close your eyes, heavy now, heavier still. Let time itself put away its quills and books, its trumpets and drums. Rest in the silence between centuries, where only your calm breath matters.